The first question that we wanted to get into today is what are the biggest issues facing sports turf managers in regard to turf management? I'd like to start off the conversation talking about the biggest issue, which is safety. And I'd like to ask Dr. Strachan to speak about safety in terms of synthetic turf and some of the recent headlines that have been in the news and some recent developments. Dr. Strachan.
Thank you. Well, first, it's a pleasure to be here. Thanks, everyone, for coming. And, it's as a researcher and doing sports turf research and being a parent of kids that play sports, the thing that's most important is a safe playing surface, whether it's natural or artificial. And there's a lot of attention that gets brought up, particularly with the concussions that's been out. And when you play sports, it's particularly football. It's a violent game, so injuries are going to happen, concussions are going to happen. But as a person that kind of looks at trying to make the surfaces safer, it comes down to it's not the concussions that I kind of rely on for the playing surfaces, but how do we maintain the surface that's going to hold up the longest, not compact, not get too hard, maybe not be too soft even, but be consistent. So if it's soccer, the ball roll is going to be good and consistent. Players aren't going to catch their knees, their ankles. And if you provide a good playing surface that can extend and hold up to wear on the natural grass surfaces, it's going to be safer for the kids if they fall on it. We're having data to show we can provide a safer surface by controlling weeds with chemical applications. My colleague, Dr. Jim Brosnan and Dr. Gannon at NC State did a follow-up study where they took soccer balls and put cotton swabs and rolled them across the turf before, right after, 1 hour, 4, 8, 24, 72 hours after applying 2,4-D, or the herbicide. And then they went and they analyzed it to see what was there. If you spray 2,4-D, 85% of it can be taken up in the first 15 minutes. And if you happen to irrigate that night, it's undetectable, the 2,4-D. So the risk of exposure is zero. If you don't irrigate, it's so low, well below what EPA says after 24 hours that it's safe.
As long as you're doing everything you can to keep it safe and the field plays safe, this, for us, probably the worst our field has ever looked was our last home game this year was against Wake Forest. Now, we had played in a complete monsoon for Notre Dame, turned around the next week and played another 1.5 inches of rain. Had a third straight home game, which just added to it. Reseeded the whole field again, came back in, played in the rain again. And the field aesthetically did not look well, but it played safe. It was true-footed. If you're doing your agronomical practices correctly, you're going to keep, safety is going to be your first concern.
While you see things in the news or whatever it is about, concussions and all that, and it's made a big deal on a day-to-day basis, just the willingness of coaches and parents to put their kids out on fields that really aren't safe is pretty shocking to me. And I think it just goes to, part of our job is being educators. We have to educate not only the people that we work for and what we do, it's also the parents and the coaches, just to let them know that that's not good, that's not right, to put these kids out on those type of fields.
In Pittsburgh alone, in like the past 2 or 3 years, we've had about 10 golf courses closed down, where Parks and Recs are constantly asking, where can we get more field space? How can we develop the land we have into usable fields? Or what can we do to make our fields safer to get more events on the fields? And they're basically all looking at professional sports. Hey, my boss saw the Pirate game. Hey, my boss saw the football game last night. How can my field look like that? So from my standpoint, expectations are going up for athletic fields, but I haven't seen budgets kind of follow that same expectation. Budgets from at least my market have pretty much stayed stagnant over the past couple years. They've gone up a tiny bit, but nowhere near what I would expect them to go up when you have your boss and everyone else asking, why can't we look like PNC Park, or how can we get 50 to 100 more events on our field this year compared to last year?
There's so much pressure from the communities, the Chamber of Commerce, because you get a rainy weekend and you cancel this event, it's a lot of money being lost. There's a lot of pressure for these fields to get used when they probably shouldn't be. I think this is a challenge for sports turf managers and researchers and educators, is how do we get more money put back into maintaining these fields? Well, that's, because if it's a rainy event, but they're native soil fields, how do we make these, a sand cap field so that they can hold up to that wear in those instances? And so that's kind of driven a lot of our research. We're doing studies now looking at native soil versus sand-based fields under dry field capacity and saturated conditions, and seeing how differently they wear. And hopefully that would be a way to actually have some quantifiable data that, you guys can take and say, look, either we cancel these games or you up our budget to give us the resources we have so we can withstand all
Right.
those events.
As a former professor, I always felt that the best way to improve as a profession was through education and communication. And certainly I advocate anybody in this room to work with their local extension services, the universities like John or Penn State with Andy. Get involved with the universities, communicate. It's amazing how much information you'll get from the professors or universities and how much they'll get back as well, okay? I basically get some of my best ideas from out in the fields.
I think being proactive is, it's the charge of all of us as educators and researchers, and as the people that look after the fields, the people that sell products to people. I'm sitting here looking at Darren, and I can think of numerous times a year that Darren will send an email asking a question about maintaining the practice field. He's using his resources.
Right.
And he's asking us, but he's also asking other field managers. Then he compiles everything and he comes up with the best solution to what he's doing. And that's, and you're not unique, because there's a lot, that's what makes great field managers,
Right.
to come in and do what you do. You see the blogs that the ACC guys are doing at Duke and Clemson and things like that. It's helping each other get to where we're going.
Right.
I think that's being proactive.
Right.
I actually put a PowerPoint together at one point because they were, I was under the pressure to get these fields to a major league level. And I said, okay, well, this is what they have to work with. We have, 10 fields in our complex. I saw it as that's a spring training complex in my mind if you're going to have them at major league quality. So, I, called some peers and got some numbers and said, this is what they have to work with. This is what we have to work with. And it was just all about math. And that's when it hit. Then they realize, oh, I understand now. So, when it comes to the expectations, a lot of times it's up to us to, set the standard and to really make them realistic.
Try to find a distributor that's keeping up to date on what's going on, that's following where the industry's going, keeping up to date on some legislation, whether it be local, federal, and use your distributor as another source for information or to help you out. Try to get away from the guys that are just there, show up, hey, give me an order, and leave. Find someone that you can work with, call up on the phone, hey, I'm having this problem, do you have ideas? Someone that could run through, a number of different ideas, see what's going on, and you can use as a resource.
When I was in athletic field construction, it used to boggle my mind that, we'd get a specification for a synthetic field that was, 6 pages long and detailed like you wouldn't believe, and then you'd get the specifications for a natural field, and it was about a paragraph, and I'd read it, and I'd have to call the architect and say, what do you want here? What are we doing? And then they put those two fields side by side and compare them as how they performed. So the whole synthetic and natural argument is so multi-layered to me, but it's still the people making the decisions of whether to go synthetic or natural are doing it with not all the information, and they're doing it, hey, they're smart people otherwise, but they're just not, professionals in our industry. To have high-end sports turf and not use a chemical is very, very difficult. And just the word chemical in and of itself is a 4-letter word now. People hear it and they flip out. It doesn't matter that you're using it responsibly in the way you're supposed to, and it'll actually help you. You know, I go with a very natural program myself, and I try to do reduced inputs and all of that thing, you know, be sustainable. It's very difficult for the general public to understand. You know, when you use terms like organic just under that umbrella, you know, they automatically think, oh, chemical free.
Yeah.
One of the big changes I see is this trend towards sustainable turfgrass management, which includes maybe using chemicals, but maybe using less chemicals to achieve what you need to achieve. And with that sustainable management thrust, there's also the idea of healthy turf. You've probably heard of that. And utilizing plant medicines, chemicals if you want to call them that, in a way that will improve the health of the turf, so that you might use one product, let's say a Civitas Turf Defense, in combination with other products, but overall you're using less product to get maybe better performing turf. So these are new concepts, a little bit controversial, but nevertheless I see the trend moving in that direction.
We're going in a direction of reduced inputs to get what you need. And in order to do that, you need products that can do multiple things. And that's, you know, kind of where Civitas, you know, when I started using that product, you know, it's more about plant protection than it is, you know, a fungicide. And, you know, you're talking about wear tolerance, you're talking about the additional benefits of, you know, preventative fungicide. So you get multiple things from one product. So I think that's, you know, the more and more I talk to people, you're getting away from throwing down, you know, 15, 18 pounds of N on these fields and going back to what it's supposed to be. Recently, we now have to hold a fertilizer license along with our pesticide license. And, you know, this is something that, you know, again, I think we're all going to be facing this in the future. Montgomery County in Maryland, you know, just tried to, well, they did pass a pesticide ban completely for the entire county. The one thing, you're talking about the golf guys, the golf people really fought this hard, even though they were exempt from it. And I think it's something that, as in the sports turf side, we really need to wake up to, because, you know, we're low-hanging fruit when it comes to regulation. We don't have the, you know, like the local golf course, they have a lobbying committee. And, you know, that kind of blew my mind. And, you know, that's just at the state level.
But sustainable and plant health means priming. You're not basically putting out materials because you have a problem. You're putting out materials to not have a problem. You're not going to see a response to sustainable materials until you have a stress, whether it's abiotic, cold, hot, drought, whatever, salt, or biotic like diseases or whatever. So you have to prime the plant so the plant itself can develop those plant defense mechanisms. Okay, so that's a different, sort of, I wouldn't call it a tremendous shift, but it is a shift in the way we will encourage management in the future.
You know, I've never seen extra money from a specific event or anything like that, but when it comes to the revenue side, yeah, we may be non-revenue, but I consider us revenue insurance. You know, we don't make money unless we play baseball. And it's our job to make sure that happens, no matter what, and to be done safely. So, you know, all the other stuff that you do, if we don't play that baseball game, it's all for naught.